Welcome to episode 55 of the Ikario podcast. In today's episode, Shane talks with Jan Broders. Jan coaches high performers from around the world and consults corporations on stress management initiatives and leadership programs. Jan himself dived into this work after at age 27 he actually physically collapsed himself due to burnout. After this, he actually had to spend some time in a clinic recovering physically, mentally and emotionally. But after this experience, this led him to a deep dive into personal development, mindfulness meditation, and starting his own coaching practice. Yeah, so it's fair to say, this guy, when he speaks from experience. And in this conversation, Jan and Shane talk about burnout, they talk about stress, they talk about how to ensure that you can become a high performer without it leading to burnout, stress, overwhelm, and other negative effects. The show notes for this episode can be found, as always, at ikario.com/055. And with that, let's dive in. Jan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for having me.
So there's several things that I think we can talk about that are going to be interesting.
Yeah.
And one of them is stress and burnout and, let's say, going too far in the pursuit of success. And this is something that obviously, everyone in the audience here is interested in learning how to improve their lives. A lot of them are, high performance kind of people, right? Success chasing people, a lot of entrepreneurs and builders. And this is such a common thing that we get into this. We start building something and we get into the habit of workaholism, really. We become workaholics, right? Mm-hmm. And it's almost like you can't shut it off, because maybe in the beginning, building a business, it requires that you put in your life and soul in order to get something off the ground. But then it's so common that you can't shut it off, even once the business is successful. And I had this too, by the way. It took me so long to get out of these habits of just being at my computer all day, working all the time, even if it wasn't necessary. So very, very difficult. And I know you have a personal experience with this that, I'd love for you to share with the listeners.
Yeah. Just from the things that you shared, there's so many great points to touch on already. The word success, workaholism. So I'm sure we'll speak about those things throughout the call. I'm so interested in this topic because I have a personal story with this. One thing that completely changed my life and that got me on this track of supporting other people with it. So in my first career, my first life, I was in hotel management, and not just I work at the reception a little bit, or I know I serve some tea or so, but like full on high potential program, one of 6 people in all of Europe in this program to become a general manager of a 5-star hotel within a few years. Quite demanding. I felt amazing about it because I was one of the chosen, a few chosen and all, and it all worked very well. And in terms of getting new positions and being able to change my LinkedIn profile title, that was the most important days always. Oh, now I'm going to do this, now I'm that, and receiving all the congratulations on LinkedIn. And the last position that I did, I was in revenue management, where you determine the rates of every night, right? It changes every night, just like flights. If you don't book by Sunday night, it might change on Monday or so. That's what we do with hotel rooms as well. And I'm going to my office in the morning, very long weekend, worked on the weekend again. And I want to go to my office and I have to cross the hotel lobby. And it's a beautiful 5-star marble lobby, fantastic. It's like an atrium. It's 12 stories high or so. And in the middle of that place, I get the craziest panic attack and I collapse and faint and my body just completely shuts down, right? And extreme chest pains in my left arm and chest pain, left arm, heart attack. Oh no, all those things. Yeah. And in your mind, you're already in your grave, and all very dramatic, and people standing around you. Ambulance is coming. And while I was laying there on this cold marble floor, I'd ripped my tie off. I'd taken my jacket off. I'd taken my shoes off. I was laying half naked, essentially, surrounded by guests and colleagues and whoever wanted to join in. And there's this thought coming, okay, Jan, either you're going to die now or something's going to change. But both is better than what you're doing right now. And I was very shocked by that. I just remember, it's like, what? I thought I was doing amazing. I thought I was doing everything right, and I was successful and all. And yeah, that just really shocked me and showed me, okay, maybe not everything is going right. And so that really got me on this whole track, yeah, of looking at my life from another perspective and paying attention more closely. And we can dive into some of those things here, but I just noticed I am not successful. And that's why when you mentioned earlier, many people, they're successful people on the path of success. And whenever I hear that, I become very aware that, okay, you mean financial success or economic success also, right? We have quite a fixed definition of what success means. And I was successful in that sense. But as a human being, I failed miserably. I wasn't a very successful hotel manager because ending up in hotel lobby is not a KPI you want to meet, right?
Yeah. How many? It's been 0 days since someone fainted in the lobby.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, and that really got me into this, because first for myself, I wanted to heal myself, and then after a few years, people started approaching me saying, "Hey, Jan, you live very differently now than you did back then. They knew me from back then, and you were quite stressed and this walking zombie. What did you do? Can you support me?" And this is how this whole coaching business started. And now, and this is why I was a few minutes late, I was just coaching a company here on the island of Mallorca where I live now, and I help them with that as well. And it's just really fulfilling for me now to see people improve their lives, because I know how horrible it feels.
Yeah. And so are you mainly targeting this kind of overworked professional and helping them like de-stress and bring balance to their lives? Is that like your target clientele?
Yes, I think it's oftentimes that's the pain people are experiencing, that it's just too much. It's like overwhelm, or really like that. That's the pain. People would then call it stress or overwhelm, but it's okay. Relationships aren't going as well anymore, either with a spouse, with the kids. That's another thing. Like, I just don't have time for my kids. I'm on my phone at the playground all the time, things like that. And at some point, people or parents are noticing maybe that's not the parent I want to be, but I can't really get out of it. Or just crisis at work in one way or another, not being able to perform anymore, or just conflict. Conflict is really a big thing. I think that's a great symptom of stress, is conflict. And that's the people I work with. And in companies, we also do like mindfulness programs or burnout prevention programs or things like this. Yeah.
So another thing that I just want to mention, because it just kind of struck me as you were talking about your story about the LinkedIn profile update.
Yeah.
I think that's quite significant, because I think a lot about human behavior, and I think that because so much human behavior is unconscious. We're not consciously making choices. We're kind of just along for the ride a lot of the time. And I think incentives are really important. And that's one of the things that I think can lead us down a destructive path, where you are in a situation where you have some signals that give you gratification or validation. And that can be, you update your job description on LinkedIn and people congratulate you. You get a raise, you get some other thing that kind of validates. And that feeling of validation, that feeling of progress, the feeling of I'm on the right path can be so attractive that you just end up chasing that without realizing that you're neglecting every other part of your life. Yeah. And the same can be, it can be just money, right? You just try to make more and more money, and at some point you wake up and realize, oh, there's more to life, right? Very common story, basically. Yeah. But it can also be the kind of thing where people are like cloud chasing, or there's so many creators who are essentially, they're on some platform, maybe on YouTube, and they're churning out video after video. They're getting more and more views. They get this validation from the views, but they're just stressed out of their minds. They're not even making that much money. It's just somehow you've become captured by this reward mechanism, and you've forgotten that there's more to life in a way. And I think that happens more easily than we expect.
Yeah, 100%. And finally, I just mentioned like the KPI, like in a humorous way, right? It's not the KPI you want to meet, but in a way, it is like we're subconsciously measuring KPI. So we would never call it that, but we're measuring our success by the number of followers we may have, or the amount of money we make, or the title on the LinkedIn, or how many years it took me to become whatever. And in coaching, I always love to think in questions, right? What question is the person asking him or herself? And in that sense, somebody's only asking the questions, how much money am I making? How can I make more? Like it's only in one arena.
Yeah.
But, and a really more interesting question could be, I don't know, quite simple, but am I happy? How am I feeling? Am I embodying the person I would admire if I saw that person also, right?
Yeah.
Could be different questions. But as you say, through the reward system that is built, everything is geared toward one arena only. And that's a shame. And it has to lead us into imbalance, because if we only focus on one area of our life.
And I think it can actually be quite difficult, because you almost have to make a sacrifice, right? If you're on the path, on the career path, on the entrepreneurial path, and you're making a lot of money, let's say, it's almost like you have to say no to, I'm going to be a story of the guy who made, the millions in his 20s or something. It's like, and say I'm going to spend a weekend high so that I have a life. It's almost like this trade-off for, well, what points am I going to get for having a more balanced life, for spending more time with my friends or whatever? Like, there's not this same reward. There's not the same social reward, essentially, or external reward. So it almost feels like a sacrifice, which is bizarre, but I think that's what it feels like.
Yeah, and I think that's I want to challenge this a little bit. I think there's some truth to this, but I think it's also the way of thinking that keeps many of us in that hamster wheel, on the treadmill, whatever, because the idea is it's an either or. It's an either or scenario. It's like either I'm making money or I'm being a good father. It's interesting, like even if you phrase it that, right, either making more money or I'm a good father, but many of us, we're still choosing money, right? Even in this, this equation, it's like, dude, well, how did you get to have kids?
How did that happen?
Just a funny thing too. Somebody I was in a conversation the other day, and somebody said, "Oh, isn't this amazing?" Because we just had another baby 2 months ago, and he said, "Oh, isn't it amazing? And you can sort of make your own schedule, and now you have time for your baby." And I said, "Yeah, that's amazing." And I had time to make a baby, which back in the day, I never saw my.
I wouldn't have had, yeah.
So sort of by default. You're also leaving people out becoming parents who are working too much. No, but in all seriousness, I think we view it as an either or scenario, and maybe to a certain extent it is. But I want to introduce the idea. Okay, is free time or relaxation, time with my children, time looking after my body, adding to my success? Right? Like there's this whole world of people who work out a lot because they say, well, that's really adding to my success, and. And yes, and I think it is. And there is something, it's called the Yerkes-Dodson law. It's like some two Harvard professors. And it's like this half circle sort of bowl. And it's like on the lower end, there's no stress at all. And your performance is super low. Right? Okay, so if there's no stress, no demands, you don't perform. And in the most extreme, it's bore out that you experience. If there's no stimuli, and you work at an assembly line or so, you might bore out, right? And have strong, and then the stress rises and your level of performance rises, and then there's this tipping point where more added stress, every unit of more stress decreases your level of performance. And I think in the end, it's the art of playing in that field and knowing when it is too much and when it is no longer adding to my performance, and being really, really mindful of that, because at that point, you need to change some habits and some views on the world, because you're always used to doing more, and it's all working. And at some point, it's eating itself up, right? It's what has been a great gift and was adding to your success is now taking from your success. So it's not, you cannot unlimitedly, I used to say that, add work and add work time. There's the point. So the either or thing only works up to a certain point. Like what you were mentioning, taking away from.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, that's also something that I think working hours is a good example of that, because there's only so many hours you can work. Even if you're an absolute beast
at working, there's only so many hours you can work before your focus fades and before your performance fades to the point where you might as well not be working.
Yeah.
And I think many of us, or many people who experience these stress and burnout symptoms, are spending a lot of time working into that zone of just completely diminished returns.
Yeah.
But it can be difficult to like acknowledge that and change your habits.
Yeah.
And so that's something I'd love to hear from you. As someone, you work with people who struggle with this, and you clearly see many stories. You see, what works and what doesn't work. Can you tell us a bit about? Yeah, can you tell us a bit about that? Like, what kind of, if you have a client who's like we said on this path, they've maybe experienced burnout already, or it's coming for them, and they're coming to you for help. What are the kind of things that you do with them? And can you tell us maybe some things that you tried maybe earlier on in your coaching and realized this doesn't work, and some things that do work?
Yeah, I think the easiest that someone would say, oh, I just have to stop working at 6 or something, and I have to introduce workout time, like all those things, right? Like the simple solution. Okay, I just balance it. And while that might work a little bit in terms of, okay, you don't no longer work 14 hours, but only maybe 10 or so your body relaxes that way a little bit, it can add a lot of more stress, because all of a sudden we are what you were mentioning before. Oh no, there's anxiety because I'm away from work, and while I'm at the gym and trying to do something for my body, really it feels even more stressful, right? So I would recommend somebody to find a hobby, to go running, to move your body, to spend time with the kids, like do all that, yes, but that alone is not going to change much, because I'd say the program running the person is still the same. So so what really works, and unfortunately it's not an easy fix, it's not easy, it's quite simple, but it's not easy, is to reconstruct, that's how I call it, reconstruct the building that somebody is living in, the world that somebody is living in. What's the foundation of this building, the low-bearing walls, the pillars, the roof, whatever. And that means, okay, is there the idea only when I work a lot I can make a lot of money, like beliefs and just rules somebody lives by. And naturally that person, if there is this really, really strong belief and conviction, in German, there's this quite funny saying, first the work, then the relaxation, entertainment or so. And it's like many Germans work by that. It's like, no, I have to put a lot of in, and then at someday I can enjoy this. So this person will never be able to relax, because there's this internal rule, right? So what we do really is a lot of looking at those internal things and looking at what is the program that somebody runs on, and finding, in my experience, I always want to find this one thing that was adding to the success, which is now eating it up, like I was saying earlier. As an example, I have a client, he did the whole really successful entrepreneurial thing, sold the company for a few hundred million euros, and is still living in the same hustle mode. And it might have been amazing back then, probably not in our areas, but it worked for him economically and all that. But now he wants to have a family and live with his wife, but it's still in hustle mode. And the program that was once serving him tremendously, it's ruining the marriage. It's hard on the children. It's hard on health, and it's no longer working. And I think that those are some of the programs we need to find. What was once working, which is no longer working. So to answer your question, like in a nutshell, again, pure habit change. Yeah. I mean, nothing wrong with sleeping more, nothing wrong with eating healthy, nothing wrong with doing all those things. But in order for it to sustainably change, we need to look inwards and look at all those things. And funny story then is my experience when looking at all these high achievers and very accomplished people, like I said, this entrepreneur, some executive from companies like Siemens or Mercedes or things like that, there's some level of insecurity often, which of course we don't want to admit, because we have these high positions and we're in a position of power and we're being admired and we make big decisions and all this. But oftentimes there's some funny, subtle level of insecurity that lets us work at that level, that prohibits us from saying no and for almost standing up for ourselves and looking after ourselves. And sometimes that's shocking, because these are very accomplished people, high-performing people. But but in a way they are not fully making all decisions themselves, but almost being pushed by this, whatever feeling that may be. And once we're able to solve that to a certain extent, it's like, oh, I'm finally able to say what I really want, to work in the way that I really want, that I really enjoy. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's less money afterwards. So I've seen people, that's not an entrepreneurial space, now this is an example from the corporate world. She was working for this promotion forever and was never deemed good enough. And we worked together. She worked a less and more relaxed way. And all of a sudden she's being promoted, right? Because people could say, well, yeah, we can trust her now because she's no longer this manic workaholic.
Yeah.
And so it adds to your success. Yeah. It's not in
that resonates a lot. So one thing that came to mind for me is also I've definitely experienced this too, that what worked to a certain degree starts working against you. And for me, an example of that was, letting go of the kind of solopreneur mindset, right? Once I started growing a team and really learning to actually rely on other people and getting out of this mindset of just doing everything myself, it was really difficult for me. But that was exactly one of those things. Is if you work with people and you still try to control everything and do everything yourself, it's just, it's like you're putting the brakes on everything. And but it can be difficult to switch. And like you say, it makes sense that like, once you realize here's how my behavior is actually counterproductive, that's a necessary step, I guess, to then be able to change. Because I really like how you say that, if you're a workaholic and you just step away from work and go to the gym, then you're just going to be anxious about it. I think that's a really good point. Like if you don't actually change your mind about it, it's not going to feel good, right? All you want is to be back at work, basically. That's exactly. I can also relate to that.
And I would even describe it in a way that it's like, let's say that's behavioral level, right? And what I was speaking for before was more like mental, emotional. And the issue of workaholism is not a behavior issue. It's not generated in behavior. It's like by default, you just work a lot. It's not like a wrong behavior. It's like behavior is a result of something, right? But if you only try to work on the behavioral level, maybe at some point, like if you for a long time you work less, at some point maybe your whole system says, oh, fuck it, I just stop being anxious because now for years I've only been working 10 hours, but it's still, this impulse is still there and you will still feel horrible about it. 100%.
So how can we get at these stories and beliefs? Like, if I wanted to identify, okay, are there such beliefs that I have that might be getting in my way right now? How would I find out? I guess that most people are not just immediately aware of that, right?
No. And I think that's sometimes fun. Just look at your limiting beliefs, right? And turn them around with whatever. That would be really easy. In my experience, it takes pure honesty with ourselves. Like that's like a prerequisite for it. Really being honest with ourselves. And what I see in the world is that very successful people, like truly successful, not only, okay, I've worked my ass off, I have a few $1 million and I'm miserable and do coke every night or so. But like truly successful, I witness them to be quite honest and very self-aware. They know themselves quite well. And they're also ready to admit weaknesses or flaws, or like you say, those, oh, well, actually, there's this thing, I'm still stuck in the solopreneur mindset. I'm aware of it and I'm ready to admit it openly, right? You just said it to the world, basically. And that's I think the first step, being really honest with ourselves, to not try to uphold a facade and an image. And no, I don't need this, really. But because what I would often hear, and maybe somebody listening now would catch themselves as well, say, oh, I just need to plan a little bit better. Oh, yeah, it'll get better next month. It's just October is quite tough. It'll get better 2022. I just have this one. I need to get this off the ground, Jan. You don't understand what's going on here. It's, and we all recognize that self-talk, or we talk to others. Oh, no, you don't understand. It's just busy time, like post-COVID.
It's always an exception.
Yeah. And it's always like, you don't understand. It's really, It's really tough now, right? It's like, oh,
Yeah.
and it's quite funny. And it's also this thing, yeah, it'll get better next week. Or I just need to plan better. Really, I just need to plan better. I just need to do it. It's like, yeah, but that's not the solution. So your question, how do you look at those? It's really, it's the level of practice self-awareness, observing ourselves, what's going on. Okay, what are moments, when do I feel how, like during the day, let's say, okay, are there moments where I just feel miserable? Are there moments where I feel stressed? Are there moments where I feel overwhelmed, or where this, I think, is observation of the emotional level. And then what really leads to that as well, which is sometimes maybe somebody who's not very connected with that, because if we're in our head all the time and working, oftentimes we don't even feel our body. Like somebody, I don't know what stress feels like. I don't know. Like there's no body awareness anymore, which is fine. It's difficult at that level. But another thing could be of the mental chatter. Okay, what are like typical things that could be coming up for you to cause you to work more and to want even more? And that's the what could it be? I just quickly need to. I had the example the other day with somebody, and that was like the signal word was, yeah, it'll be done quickly or something. It was just like, I just need to. And we realized whenever that comes up, she's really getting into a direction, completely taking on too much, and it never takes only a little while.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's, I just quickly do this. I just quickly do that, and so it's really a level of self-awareness, observing our mental chatter. What are like signal words that we might be saying that lead us into that type of behavior? And from there, we can then question, okay, what's the rule here? Why am I saying this? So maybe easier than a belief or so, it sounds quite abstract, but we can call it, what are the rules that you live by? And again, rather than just coming up with the rules, looking for symptoms, indicators in the moments when we could dig for the rule.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Easy to understand. I'm not sure.
No, I do. I mean, I can totally relate to what you're saying, like both from myself and also from working with other people, right? Where this kind of brushing it off, right? There's different ways to brush it off. One of them is, oh, it won't take long, or don't worry about it, or yeah, even like the kind of excuse, oh, you're taking on too much, and you're taking on more, saying, oh, this is just a little thing, it won't make a difference, right? There's already too much. But you're somehow telling yourself this is fine. And also this idea that, oh, it's only this month, or it's only until this project is finished, and so on. And invariably what happens is, by the time this project is finished, there's 2 others. And now that's the reason, and it just keeps going. And it's almost like you always find a way to kick the can down the road. You always find a way to pretend like this isn't a problem because it's somehow an exception and it's just a little thing and so on. But it's like,
and nobody else
clearly is a problem. Yeah. And nobody else gets it. So yeah, just being, I think that's really interesting, and that is something to look out for, because now that you mention it, I've definitely done this, and I've seen this in overworkers a lot. There's always some excuse. There's always this kind of story, and it's almost like looking for, how do you minimize the problem? How do you brush it off? How do you extend the deadline for when you're going to deal with this? Yeah. That might be a good place to start. Yeah.
And I find it interesting really we all, so it's like a little on the side, we all experience stress differently. We have different stress symptoms, right? Like in my world, I love to distinguish between mental, physical, emotional, and behavioral, right? Mental, not being able to concentrate; emotional, maybe starting to cry or starting to be really angry. Physical, back pain, not being to sleep, and behavioral could be smoking too much or more, or at all, or drinking more, or not picking up the phone when friends are calling. I remember me doing that, right? My family is calling, my friends are calling back in the day, and I'm just, can't be bothered. Like, this is not this. Don't you get how much I have to do? Like, you dare calling me now, right? Nobody understands. So those are different dimensions. And the first thing, again, for me, it's all about building awareness about yourself. I think that really is key. There is no prescription, just do this and you will never be stressed. That doesn't exist, right? It really is about self-awareness, discovering yourself. What is the program you run on? Like, that is running you, what are the rules you live by. And also here, looking out, what does stress feel like in my world? How do I experience it? And again, that's then a starting point, like a signal. Oh, let me look out. What just happened? I'm having 2 beers tonight. Usually I only have one. Or I feel this urge to drink tonight. What's going on? It's already a stress symptom. And the dramatic thing, in my opinion, is that most of these stress symptoms that are clearly stress symptoms have become normal in our society, and they're partly being celebrated, right? They're partly being celebrated as a sign for, oh my God, he's a hustler, he's a go-getter. Like, no, he's an alcoholic and he can't sleep. Like, there's nothing glorious about that, right? But there's this whole scene like this. So again, awareness building, build a little table for yourself, the 4 dimensions. How do you experience stress in your life? And once that is in our awareness, we can hopefully no longer, like you say earlier, brush over the twitching in our face, like the nervous twitching around our eyes, on the cheeks or so. I know that back in the day I was sitting in the office and, I just probably need 2 more coffees. Like, But that's what I did. I had 10 coffees a day. And at some point you sort of get rid of that twitching. But that's not part of the normal basic human condition, twitching your face. It's a sign, right? It's something to be aware of. And again, looking at that, okay, what's going on here? That something is not 100% aligned, but we need to recognize it and realize it first. Self-awareness is key for me.
Yeah, that makes sense. I agree that this is a problem where a lot of problematic behavior is basically normalized. Like you said, it's having 10 coffees. The idea that you can't talk to me before I've had my 3rd coffee or something. It's like that probably shouldn't be normal, but it kind of is, right?
Yeah, it's so funny. Now it's just, I met my son, like a 5-year-old son, he loves animals, right? He loves animal documentaries, and they always been described. It's the, I don't know, whatever. It's the wolf, the husky, and just imagine there was a documentary about humans. And we see a human. He's having his 3rd coffee, so he may be ready to talk to somebody now, as if it was documenting a human being. That wouldn't be part of the documentary. Now we have the normal face twitching at 12 p.m. again. It's like, no.
No, exactly. And I think that's, for me, I've always been very nonconformist, but I've always felt like if I want to get extraordinary results, then I have to do extraordinary things. But extraordinary doesn't mean doing more of what everyone else is doing. I think that's pretty dangerous, right? Because that then goes, okay, well, everyone else is working 10 hours. I got to work 14 hours. Everyone else has 5 coffees. I got to have 10 coffees, right? It's like, then you're just doing more of what the crowd is doing. So, and I get the reason I'm saying that is because I guess this is what I have used as a framing to make myself comfortable with doing things that are weird, right? Because it's, and it's easier as an entrepreneur because you're more self-determined. But I think it's harder in maybe a corporate setting where you have colleagues and things like that, where if you're the one person who doesn't drink coffee, the one person who doesn't come out for alcoholic drinks afterwards, it's difficult, right? But I think for me that kind of reframing has helped me, where it's almost like a confirmation that I'm doing something right if I'm not just doing what everyone else is doing in that sense.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, what everybody else is doing now could be working 16 hours a day, right? So a nonconformist could then also mean, hey, if I want to distinguish myself, so they're reaching certain levels of stress. Stress is it's like a mixture of success and stress.
That's
cool
brandable.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Get rid of sex stress. So maybe then to distinguish yourself from that is, like you said, outsourcing more. Whatever it may be, right? Being more productive, and if we speak about this again, the whole success and also mindset, the rules we live by, it would be really interesting to then look at, okay, what is it that you're trying to achieve here, right? Is it, and it could be, hey, I want to make, I don't know, 10 million a year in profits, and that's just what I'm interested in. Okay, cool, amazing, and what does that give you? Right? Is that, and that's another way you said earlier, okay, how can you get towards those beliefs, and also again questioning your motives, right? Because you might be arriving at something very uncomfortable, like then my daddy will love me or something, right? And now we're going like the psychological here, But it could be, wait, let's solve that, and you make 10 million and you're truly happy, and you're not just trying to prove it to the rest, or to the people who were, I don't know, mean back in the day, or stuff like we all have our own stories and our own reason. It would be amazing if you were like fully honest, authentically chasing those 10 million, but from another place, like we're really proactive.
Without like the inadequacy that feeds it, right? That's and that's a difficult place to get to. But I agree, that's like and that's also where it's not an either or, where you can be highly ambitious and chase these big goals without it coming from this toxic place, basically. But that's a tricky thing. But I did want to ask you about this. You already kind of started talking about this, like goals, essentially. How do goals come into this? Because again, just to share my perspective on this, I realized at some point in my life that I had this drive to optimize everything for performance as much as possible. I just felt like I have to perform, and everything is about optimizing performance. And at some point, I realized, like, well, but why am I doing that? Like, at some point, it becomes this Sisyphus task almost, right? It's just like get better and better at pushing the boulder up the hill. And why? Unless you enjoy pushing boulders up hills, you have to ask yourself what's going on. And I think for me, it was helpful to then reframe like who I actually want to be and what success means for me. And you also hinted at this at the beginning. When people say success, we kind of have this vision. You probably want to have a lot of money, career success, that kind of thing. And does that come into the work you do with people? Is there a bit about like reframing your goals, reformulating your goals?
Yeah. So what I find really interesting there is to look at what does success mean to you. And oftentimes, like you say, is the end goal. It's like something, if I'm, I don't know, the first millionaire in my family, or if I am, I don't know, whatever it may be, like some goals like this. And I love to question why that is. Like, what does that goal really give to you? Why is that important to you, right? And oftentimes, this whatever that should accomplish in your life, you can find it in another way. So because then I'm free, it's like, okay, but you're free already, blah blah. But of course, I don't want to make it the either or thing. I don't want to take the money away from the person. I still want you to make that million, but for the right reasons. We look at goals, at big why. What's your inspiration behind something? Like you said, what I love what you said there. We do that to the who do I want to be? Like, what type of person do I want to embody? Right. Also along the way, because I think it's this very classic dilemma. It's okay. Once I have this, I will, like, once X, then Y. It's just a horizon constantly moving, and you'll never get there. So it's like those really old sayings or so. But if you don't enjoy the ride, then you won't enjoy what you get in the end, right? So what I love looking at with people as well is what's really important to you, what matters to you, and more than this, what matters to you, it's what moves you. So I want to make it a bit more emotional, a bit stronger, because okay, what's important to you? I don't know, money, health, something like friends or so. But it's but what's really moving you, and then basing your goals and so on that. So it might be, and again, it's a simple exercise everybody can do. Sit down, maybe put on some emotional music or something, but we write down what has ever moved you in your life. What things have made you sad? What things have made you happy? When have you gotten angry? When did you feel something was really unjust? Like really anything that triggered some sort of emotional response. And by looking at all those different things, you may be finding something like a red thread or so, a red line. It's like, oh wait, it really has a lot to do with injustice and people being It's like, oh wow, that seems to be an important topic. So maybe we can base whatever you're doing and your goals around that, and you'll have so much more fire than just making 1 million, because that's, in the end, it can get very uninspiring after a while, right? It's just like, make a million, okay. But okay, because I'm making 1 million in a field that is super important, that's close to my heart, or I'm making 1 million because I can then part I don't know, go to schools and speak about bullying or God knows what. But again, finding something that is really important to you and that can really fuel you, and then building those goals around that as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Again, a long answer. So questioning goals.
No, that's good.
Why do you have this goal? Oftentimes, also beginning of coaching, I like to formulate goals with them and let's track, blah, blah. I'm on track with the program. And it's like, I want to make $1 million. It's like, okay, good. Yeah, but that's like, what is that? Like, it's in my opinion, there's nothing there. Like, why and what is important to you? What inspires you to want to have $1 million? And another funny thing, I would then ask, what does our coaching have to do with that? Because I'm not going to help you make $1 million. It's not what I do. It's just, okay, what's the relationship between our coaching and that $1 million? What do you feel is there? And so, oh yeah, and that just opens a whole new discussion, because I'm not there to help you achieve something. I want you to grow as a person, and yeah, that's just like a side note.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting. Like questioning. I think that as simple as it sounds, just asking why repeatedly can be really effective to get to the bottom of something.
Yeah.
And it's also something I observed, with especially with my work in the marketing space. I've had exposure to so many entrepreneurs, right? So many different entrepreneurs. I've seen loads and loads of successes and failures. And something that always struck me, that just stands out as a very clear distinction, is that the people who succeed are almost always people who love the game in some way. And people who are focused on this kind of, I want to make $1 million, right? Why are you building this website? Why are you building this business? I want to make $1 million, or however, I want to make more money. That is an almost certain sign of that it's not going to work. If you talk to people who seem to effortlessly make money, they often don't care about the money that much.
Yeah.
But they love the game. They love the game, whatever the game is. Maybe their game is, they're really good at selling, right? And they built this whole sales system, and they're just like, look at me, look at how good I am at converting. And it's like, and they love. What I mean by love the game is that if someone loves the game of selling, they're fascinated by it. They constantly learn about it. They love tweaking their sales funnel, their sales message, etc. And yes, the result is they make more and more money, but they somehow are just fascinated by the game itself.
Yeah. That brings something to mind. Study around dopamine. There's this, I forgot his name. This guy, like this neurologist, like writes about dopamine now, and says the dopamine is really being released when you're wanting something, like in the lead up to something. And then it's not so much, okay, the event, you got something and you got this hit. You're not how you would traditionally view, your dopamine hit, and that's why you check your phone and blah blah.
Yeah.
He says like the really interesting bit is dopamine being released on the way to that. And that's why successful people, as you said, they love the game and they love the creation and they love the building something, the idea, okay, this is what I'm going to build, and I get excited about that.
Yeah.
Right? You can get really excited about it, and you continue working. And that's where you get the drive and the positive energy. And that's what I definitely see as well.
And there, what brought this to mind is, like, I think if you have something you're working on that is actually meaningful to you, I think that's a really interesting question. By the way, I've never heard someone talk about it like that, where it's like, what did you say? What touches you or what moves you?
Yeah.
If you're working on something that actually moves you, that has like this emotional resonance, it's much easier to love the game. It's much easier to be like, I'm getting better at making this thing that is whatever. That's maybe it's something creative that I love, or it's a cause that I love, or it's just something that's meaningful to me. It's basically irrational. Like, why? Who cares? But for some reason, I respond to this in an emotional way, and that makes it easier to actually like the process.
Yeah. And what I observe as well is when we can then make this what moves me about others, oftentimes I can even develop more drive, and I can overcome low motivation, because I'm no longer making for myself, and I get out of bed because I know there's whatever hungry children waiting out there that I want to donate part of my money to. It's like, this is not only about me having a bad day and not getting my shit done, but and the same also, it's not about me when I overwork tonight, I'll feel shitty in the morning for sure. We all know this. Like, you might feel amazing. I'm going to work until 2 or 3, right? Next morning, I've never seen anybody who then gets up and says, "Oh, thank God I did this. I feel so much better today," right? Like, the first half of the day, you're just recovering. Like, oh my gosh, shit, why did I do this? And why did it take so long? Like, usually only takes that, right? And so you might even catch yourself there and say, hey, this is not only about me, about giving me this little sense of accomplishment of working until 2 a.m., but this is for a greater cause. And I really need to look after myself. I need to regulate myself in this way. There was one more really interesting thing that you said, the love the game. Yeah, totally. And I see this as well, that many people really very successful, like extremely successful, they just really loved it. And it wasn't so much about the money, and the money was sort of following as a consequence. Oh, another thing that I just thought of, I was speaking with I didn't even know who he was when I first met him. And then it turns out he's this very famous music producer. Like, he produced pretty much all the music that I listened to when I was growing up. It's like, oh shit, you did all that? But cool. And then we're talking about similar conversations. That so in my work, I want to have even more meaning. Like, my next level is to make more of a difference and to make it more about a cause. I want to remove it even more from myself. And then you're just, oh my God, I've never seen anybody ask themselves that question. I don't know anybody who would ask, why am I doing this? And why am I making this much? What do I make the money for? Or so. And it's like, what? No, really? Never? Like, in your world? I said, no, never anybody ever asked this.
Wow.
It's like, oh, interesting. It seems quite normal for me now being in my world, but majority of the people never asked that question. I find it really powerful one. And then we move into something really, which I would then call fulfillment, right? Not just happiness. Happiness kicks and I reached the goal, but like it's more of a subtle, it's a softer feeling of fulfillment that just really round, and you just really feel complete. Yeah. It's like another.
Yeah, this is great stuff. One more thing I would like to ask, because I think that there's great takeaways here for questioning your goals and getting at the rules that you live by. I think this is great stuff that is also actionable. So thanks for sharing that with us. One more thing I want to ask, like, is there anything that I should have asked but didn't? Like, is there anything else from that you can share with the audience that maybe we just haven't touched on yet, but that you think people would benefit from?
Yeah. I think it's really worth looking at our emotions. It's funny because I'm going to do a workshop actually with Mercedes-Benz about emotion at the workplace. And I was really pleased that they accepted this proposal, because it's like, oh, people are opening up to that, right? Especially even in that environment. And I want to speak with people about, and this is what I find interesting for everybody listening to, what emotions are what are steering you, and what emotions are you trying to avoid while overworking? And I feel it's always in emotions games. Okay, I don't want to feel inadequate. I don't want to feel lazy. Whatever it may be. It's like, oh, this is what I'm avoiding. And in the beginning, in the very first sentence that you mentioned the word workaholic or workaholism, right? And it is a form of addiction, right? If we look at the 12-step programs, there's like 23 or 28 of them. You can be anonymous in almost anything you want to do. It's like, and there is Anonymous Workaholics. I think that's Workaholics Anonymous. I think it's WA, and it is a form of addiction. And to me, addiction really always is about not so much, oh, I'm chasing this high, like doing coke or something. It's more, I'm running away from another thing, like I'm trying to avoid that type of feeling. And I think that there's gold there. There's like, you can really learn a lot about yourself and regulate yourself a lot better if you're honest about this. You discover that a little bit. Again, it's about self-discovery. It's about being honest with yourself. What emotions am I running away from? And again, this could be an entry point towards looking at the roots of your life and all that. But I think we underestimate that, especially in the business context, business world, because it's not about emotions. You have emotions at home. It's like rational. Online marketing, especially, look at conversions and things like that. but still, that's as humans, this is how we function. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the question.
Yeah. No, that's really
around
good.
Emotions. Mm.
Yeah, because I think it's like you say, it's unpleasant. It can be very difficult. It can be very difficult to confront this because we're so invested in running away from this, in not confronting this. But I've also found that my modality for doing this is writing. I write about things like this, and I found that it's often the most difficult writing sessions are about this kind of thing. What am I avoiding and why? It can be really, really difficult to write about this, but it's also usually the most cathartic, the thing that you're like really happy you did after you get through it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a great leading question too. Yeah. All right, Jan, thank you very much for sharing all this with us. I think this has been super valuable.
Yeah.
And like I said, loads of people have this class of problem, I think. So this is some good guidance. Where can people go to learn more about you and from you?
Yeah, website janbroders.com, and I'm on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/whatever that is, Jan Broders. Those are the two best places, I'd say. Yeah, and
all right.
Happy to share information there, to be in touch. And also, if you notice, okay, there's maybe something I want to do in my business or for my team. I notice it's not only me, but maybe I'm noticing it within my team. Something I did this morning, right? Mm-hmm. That's also something I love doing. If you want to inquire about that.
Nice. Yeah. Okay, we'll put those links in the show notes, of course, so that people can find you. And with that, thank you very much for sharing. And this is a real pleasure.
Again, for me as well. Thank you so much.